Hello. In this video we're going to look at techniques for images. The first thing I am going to look at is how to resize an image. I click on here. You can see I've got this image selected here, and what you'll notice is you'll see these little boxes appear at these points on the image. If you hover your mouse over them and then click, you'll be able to resize the image. Now if I go here and click on this one, you can see I can stretch it out that way. Now I'm just going to undo that. The problem with just using this technique is you can warp the picture so it's too wide or too narrow or something like that. And so what you can instead do is when you're hovering over a corner, which allows you to do both at once, hold down this shift key. That's the one below the caps lock, and that will allow you to resize while keeping the same height and width. And that is the very quick and easy way to resize the image. Now, the next thing we're going to look at is cropping. If you've been resizing something, you need to hit return key, the enter key, to exit out of it. We see here, well, we've got this picture where we've got the family at the beach and a unexpected intruder. Now, if we wanted to use this image of the family, we'd want to get rid of this. So what we've got to do is crop out the unwanted parts. And the easiest way to do that is we grab this tool, which is the marquee tool. I click on this, I just select the bits I don't want, that section, and then just hit backspace, which is the key just above return, and now I can crop down this image by just selecting the areas I don't want to keep and deleting them. When I'm done, I'm going to hit Control D to remove my selection, but now I have the image I want with none of the intruders, and they're resized for an extra little kick. So next up is rotating. Now rotating is very similar to resizing. You notice I was using these corner positions to resize. If I move my mouse about a bit further, you'll see it turns into a semicircle. If I click and move now, I will adjust the rotation. If I hold down the shift key in here, it will allow me to do it in steady progression. So in this case I want my thing to be about here, and now I've rotated my image. Next up we're going to be looking at brightness and contrast. Now if I click on this one, I get, whoops, sorry, wrong thing. If I click here, go down to the bottom, you see this icon here that kind of almost looks like a yin-yang symbol. We click on that, it gives us the ability to adjust certain items in here. What I want to do is brightness and contrast, so I click on that. Now I've just linked those layers by holding those two together. Now if I click on here, oops, brightness and contrast, it allows me to adjust the brightness and the contrast. So what I want to do here is if I push the brightness up and the contrast up, you can see I get a slightly clearer picture of the person. And when I feel that I'm done, I click on that one and I just go to merge down. And now my character is slightly brighter and has slightly more contrast. Next up, it's removing background. A common thing you'll probably want to do when manipulating images is get rid of backgrounds. Now, this is one of the few things that will take a fair amount of time and effort. So I would try and maybe do this one first if you're pressed for time. Or perhaps leave it to the end and do a rough cutout before you then try and do your detailed cutout. Because if I did the same thing that I did with the cropping, I would get most of the background out there, and that might just be enough for your basic design. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just zoom in. I'm zooming in by holding down the Alt key, which is the one right next to the spacebar, and using the mouse wheel to zoom in. What I want to do here now is basically select everything that isn't the plane. What I'm going to use to do this is the quick select tool. This is the 4th brush down. I click on this, and what it allows me to do is, when I've selected the image, paint through it, and it will pick up the areas that look the same. So if I start here in this blue section, just start dragging it along, and then around, you can see it's starting to select the blue sky in the background, then along again, and now you see that it's selected a lot, in fact a bit too much. What I can do is if I hold down the Alt key again, the one next to the spacebar, and then go across the areas I definitely want to keep, like the little bit around here, whoops, and then the wings that we unfortunately got cut out, this one too, and this one, and finally this one. You can see now what we've got here is a much better selection of the plane, and what I can do now is just simply hit backspace, delete, and when I deselect that, you can see it's not perfect. There's a few little bits of blue around the edge, but I've done a pretty good job of getting rid of the background. Certainly good enough for the purposes of what we're doing in class. I still have these little bits of extra stuff down here, but I can just use the same tool I used for cropping and get rid of those. So that's the background. One of the final things I'm going to look at now is applying a filter. I've got a picture of myself in here, and while it's a fine picture, I think it looks a bit unremarkable for using on a website or a magazine cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to apply a artistic filter to it. I make sure I've got my right layer selected. I can always check this by clicking on the little eye icon, and that'll hide that layer and show it again. If you ever get confused about what layer you're on, that's a quick way of checking. So I've got the right layer selected. I go over to filter, and I'm going to go down to filter gallery. This will allow me to have a look at all the different types of filters I can apply. You can see already one of my favorites is selected, which is cutout. By changing the number of levels and tweaking around this, you can get quite a interesting look going on. I will move edge simplicity down a bit, but then drop the levels, and you can see now that's a more visually striking image. If you don't like the cutout, there are a bunch of other ones which you can have a look at that give you various different kind of effects. The first folder, artistic, is probably one of the better ones. Yeah, poster edges gives you a bit of like a comic book look. You can use brushstrokes ones, try and make it look like a sketch, and you can muck around with these a bit to see which ones you kind of like the look of. Again, I think all of them are interesting, but my favorite one particularly is the cutout one. And yeah, just by moving this one up and down. Yeah, I like to see it, move it to a place where you can only just make out the features here. But that's nice. So if I hit OK, you see now that it's applied that filter to that image. Okay, so there you go. We've covered most of the basic types of editing you'll do with pictures. Hopefully that gives you enough to finish off your website or magazine design. Thank you.